Hello, my name is Amber Smith, and this is my English 375 research project titled Death, Divinity, and Desire, Walt Whitman's Universal Unity and Successor Texts. In this project, I wanted to understand the complex way Whitman blends death, divinity, and sexuality in the final sections of Song of Myself, and then compare two modern poets, Joy Harjo and Amanda Gorman, how they either sustain or reject this worldview. My guiding research question is, if Whitman equates death, divinity, and sexuality as parts of universal unity, how do Amanda Gorman's The Hill We Climb and Joy Harjo's Exile of Memory sustain or reject this idea? My research builds off the idea that Whitman views the universe as interconnected, that elements like the body, the soul, nature, and death cannot be fully separated. Later poets writing from different cultural and historical positions may transform or even resist that idea, and that's what I wanted to explore. To answer this question, I used a qualitative emergent coding approach. I began by reading 4 secondary scholars on Whitman, Aspis, Gordon, Brickley, and Lunan, all who examined slightly different aspects of Song of Myself. As I read, I created 6 codes based on the patterns, interpretations, and themes these scholars emphasized. The codes I developed were Big G God, Death and Immortality, Procreative Sexuality, Celebrate, I/U, and Nature Personification. These codes became the lenses I used to analyze Whitman and my successor texts. Next, I purposefully selected the final 7 sections of Song of Myself. I chose these sections because they are rich with reflection. Whitman is facing things like morality, exploring sexuality, and asserting identity in more intense and symbolic ways than earlier parts of the poem. Using my 6 codes, I examined Whitman's language in these sections, looking for exact patterns. Moments he directly references God or Jesus, references to death, explicit sexual imagery, pronoun connections, and personification of nature. Once I completed that coding process, I took the exact same codes and applied them to Joy Harjo's Exile of Memory and Amanda Gorman's The Hill We Climb. This allowed me to compare how each poet uses or avoids the same thematic categories Whitman relies on. My findings revealed that Whitman relies heavily on 4 major categories: references to God, the presence of death, the I/U relationship, and nature personification. For the Big G God code, Whitman references God 10 times within these final 7 sections. These moments are direct, capital G God, and they show Whitman wrestling with traditional Christian ideas while also suggesting he's at peace with divinity and death existing side by side. For death and immorality, I found 5 strong examples. Whitman openly addresses death as a companion, not a threat. Lines like, "And as to you, death, it is idle to try and alarm me," show how he merges morality with acceptance and even unity. Procreative sexuality appears only once, surprising given Whitman's reputation for sexual imagery. In this section, sexuality becomes less physical and more symbolic. The I/U code showed up 11 times. Whitman constantly merges himself with the reader, strangers, humanity, even the corpse and the stars. This creates a sense of dissolving boundaries and reinforcing his universal unity. Finally, nature personification appears 5 times. Nature becomes a teacher, a companion, a mirror, leafy lips, polished breast of melons. These examples show how nature is not separate from the self. It's part of Whitman's spirituality and physical identity. Okay. When I applied the same codes to Joy Harjo's Exile of Memory, I discovered both overlaps and major differences. Harjo has only 1 reference to Jesus and none to God. This is important because Harjo is writing as a native poet with a distinctly different relationship to spirituality. Instead of aligning divinity with unity, she roots spirit in land, ancestry, and survival. Death appears 5 times in her poem, just as frequently as in Whitman's, but her perspective is not peaceful or harmonious. For Harjo, death often emerges through historical trauma, violence, and generational memory. Lines like, "Our young men are killed by the police or killing themselves." This shows how death is tied to injustice and not unity. Procreative sexuality appears once, but in the context of violence, referring to Native women being raped or murdered. This stands in sharp contrast to Whitman's celebratory or symbolic relationship to the body. Harjo uses 0 examples of the I/U pronoun merging. She does not blur identities. Instead, she holds the individual and community as sacred but distinct. Where Harjo aligns most strongly with Whitman is through nature. She has 14 examples of nature personification, more than any other text I studied. But Unlike Whitman, nature for Harjo is ancestral, protective, and historical. Trees, rivers, animals, and lands become family members, storytellers, and guardians. Nature is not just a symbol for her, it's kin. Amanda Gorman's poem, The Hill We Climb, was the most surprising to analyze because almost all of Whitman's codes are absent. There are 0 references to God, 0 to death, 0 to sexuality, 0 celebrations in the Whitman sense, and 0 I/you merging. Instead, Gorman writes with a civic voice, addressing a nation rather than an individual self. The only code that appears in her poem is nature personification, which occurs 9 times. Gorman uses nature to symbolize American geography, unity, and forward movement. Quote, "The dawn is ours, golden hills of the west, and sun-baked south." Unlike Whitman's nature, which is intimately and bodily, or Harjo's nature, which is ancestral, Gorman's nature is national and metaphorical. She uses nature as a way of envisioning hope, resilience, and rebirth. When I compared the 3 poets side by side, the first major difference is clear. Gorman and Harjo completely reject Whitman's merging of divinity, death, and sexuality as a universal unity. Whitman blends these elements to show interconnectedness. His approach suggests that death is natural, God is within the self, and the body is part of a cosmic cycle. Harjo rejects this unity. Her poem shows that death is not equalizing, it is historical and traumatic. Her spirituality is not universal, it's tribal, rooted in memory and land. Her one sexual reference is not celebratory but violent. Unity is impossible without justice, so Harjo's worldview resists Whitman's blending of life forces. Gorman also rejects Whitman's unity. She does not merge God, death, or sexuality in any form. Instead, she focuses on a collective national identity and looking forward to hope. Her unity is civic rather than spiritual or bodily. But there is one powerful connection across all 3 poets: nature. Whitman uses nature to dissolve boundaries between self and universe. Harjo uses nature as an ancestor and historian. Gorman uses nature as a symbol for national rebirth. Even though they disagree deeply on divinity, death, and sexuality, all 3 writers turn to the natural world to express identity, meaning, and future possibility. In conclusion, my research shows that Whitman's universal unity is not inherited in full by modern poets. Instead, Harjo and Gorman transform nature to express their own cultural, ancestral, national visions while rejecting Whitman's merging of death, divinity, and desire. Ultimately, the end result of my research is this: Whitman sees unity everywhere, within the soul, the body, nature, and death, while Harjo and Gorman insist that unity must be earned, built, or remembered. They do not extend Whitman's universal fusion of death, divinity, and sexuality, but they do share one interconnected thread: nature. It becomes the bridge between vastly different histories and identities. By applying the same 6 codes across all 3 of my texts, I was able to trace not just influences, but meaningful evolutions in how poets understand identity, memory, and the world around them.